Hello folks, MJ Knight here. It's been a while since I've done one of these shoot rants, if you will, unscripted, unrehearsed, all that jazz. It's pretty much a pipe bomb, per se. And this actually got posted into the RDR forum not too long ago. And I'll put a link in the description so you can read this at your own leisure later. But I felt like I had to make a response to this. Being somewhat, I wouldn't say an authority, but people do tend to look for, little things that I comment on. Being a former host of Raw Down Rebound and the current face and voice of SmackView. According to... people are responding to me on Facebook. Hello. According to Luca Francini, I hope I said that correctly, of Sky Italy, WWE officially communicated to the network that SummerSlam on August 23 from Brooklyn, no longer in the Staples Center, thank goodness, will now be presented as a 4-hour-long event, putting it on par with the usual length of WrestleMania each year. Because, just for a little context and background, I think WrestleMania went to a 4-hour event. I think it was WrestleMania 17 in 2001. Comment section below to correct me if you're watching this on dynamicnight.com, Facebook, YouTube, or if you're on rivercitygamers.com. How you doing over there, Zero and the others? Nice to see you. But, yeah. Pretty much since the early 2000s, WrestleMania has gone to a 4-hour event because, WrestleMania is the Super Bowl. It's the World Series. It's the World Cup, the FA Cup final of professional wrestling, not sports entertainment. Ugh. And with SummerSlam being the, quote, party of the summer, or as Steve Austin put it, a little bit more simplified and something that made a lot more sense, the second biggest pay-per-view of the year, to which some regard as the WrestleMania of the summer. In some respects, putting it on at 4 hours, in some respects, would have it make it just like WrestleMania, but therein lies the problem. With WrestleMania, everybody puts their A game on the table for all to see so that they can, go out, absolutely, leave it all on the line and get people to go, that was worth the money for my ringside tickets, or that was worth my $59.99 to buy on pay-per-view, or your $9.99 if you're watching on the network, which I have. It's awesome. But SummerSlam, particularly in the last 10 years, it's been kind of hit and miss. 2011 was awesome. 2012, little bit iffy. I think probably the only selling point of 2012 SummerSlam was Jericho versus Ziggler, and that was the opening card. When you get an opening card that gets more of a reaction than your main event, which was Triple H versus Lesnar. Good Lord, what an absolute choke that match was. That was awful. The return match at Mania 29 was better. I'll just leave it at that. 2013... the two best matches on the card, Lesnar and Punk, which was match of the night, and one that came close or was equal to that was Cena versus Bryan. Last year was okay. Fought the main event with Lesnar and Cena, where it was just basically, it was almost like a demo tape of how to do suplexes. And don't get me wrong, Brock is an absolute machine in that ring, but he made that match boring. biggest problem I have with SummerSlam going to 4 hours is, what are you going to fill it with? You know, WWE have enough problems creative-wise at this specific point in time that they have enough problems trying to fill up a 3-hour episode of Raw or a 3-hour pay-per-view. Trying to find time for a 4-hour SummerSlam this year, it's going to require a lot on their part. And the biggest thing that WrestleMania suffers from being 4 hours is you get segments and promos that go on way too long. I mean, yeah, whilst it was nice that Rock verbally trashed Triple H and Stephanie, because let's face it, they, character-wise, they deserve it. Did we really need that segment to go on as long as it needed to? I mean, that could have been put on the pre-show and have the Andre the Giant Battle Royale moved on to the actual card, because that's where it's needed. I'm worried we're going to get a similar kind of shtick happen with a 4-hour SummerSlam, where instead of filling it with more matches, we're actually having promos, segments, and, particularly in regards to what happened at SummerSlam 2011, we see commercials and movie trailers. Now, I'm not against movie trailers being put on a pay-per-view. I mean, I appreciate it's a tough economy, but it would have made more sense if they were actual trailers to a movie from WWE Studio. See, when you have something that's actually relatable entwined with the product you're actually putting on show at that time, no problem with that. But when you see commercials where The Miz is at a 7-Eleven with a collector card, you're thinking, what? I don't get it. I just got this nagging worry that SummerSlam is basically going to be maybe 2 hours of wrestling and about 2 hours of commercials, trailers, promos, and segments that we don't really need. I mean, this is one of the worries that, still that vicious word on the wire going around that they want to push SmackDown to 3 hours. I have a problem with this. SmackDown doesn't need to be 3 hours. 2 hours, 90 minutes if you take out the commercials, it's fine. You don't need 3 hours on a Thursday night. I think this is the thing that USA Network and probably Vince McMahon in particular needs to understand, is that we want to see 2 hours of actual wrestling. We don't want to see 3 hours where there's more commercial breaks, because I didn't know how many commercial breaks Raw had until Raw started going live in, I think it was early 2005. I think that's when they started going live on Sky Sports. And the amount of commercial breaks, I'm like, dang! I was like, do you really need that many? I mean, I appreciate that you're on cable TV and you've got to adhere to certain advertisement policies and agreements. I get that. But it's overkill. And then you have these segments. I mean, this is one of the reasons I stopped watching Raw in the fall of 2013. There's not enough wrestling, and you get way too many segments and promos that go on far too long. And, I appreciate this is not in really so much in connection with the topic at hand, but the Authority storyline in 2013 was really making Raw unwatchable. Triple H can preach all he wants to creative, but he really has this knack and an ability as a heel to really squash people. Even when the guy's not wrestling, he's taking up far too much mic and camera time when... Right, let's give an example. This was the contract signing coming up for the Hell in a Cell WWE Championship between Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan. Did we really need that, that sort of 15 to 20 minutes of Triple H massaging his ego, saying, if it wasn't for me, we'd all be working for Ted Turner, and guys like Jericho and Edge never drew a dime for the company. It's like, do you hear yourself? I mean, really? Professionally, and I will give Triple H a lot of credit, it was and is still an impressive athlete. For what, particularly to come back from 2 torn quadricep injuries, I will not take anything away from the man. That takes major courage and dedication to come back from that. So for that, I will not knock him, because I'm pretty sure I would not have the commitment and, like I say, the dedication to be able to come back from an injury that severe, where very few to none have returned from, yet he did it twice. So for that, no criticism. That's something special. But with the way that he has politicked his way to staying in the main event, and to the way, the way he handles his character on the main roster, I don't like it. What he does with NXT, I think, is amazing. I've seen little bits of NXT here and there, and it actually seems more like a proper professional wrestling product. But it's just the way that he handles himself on the main roster, particularly in regards to creative and whatnot. I mean, does he really need to be there doing that? I mean, really? And this is a problem, particularly going back to, like I say, SummerSlam being 4 hours. Not enough people have the time and the patience to do that. And this is one of the reasons why I think Raw should go back to 2 hours, because the ratings pretty much say it. I mean, people have only got so much attention span to be able to focus and stay interested in what they're watching. And I know some people say sometimes more wrestling is good wrestling, but it helps when there's actual wrestling to see. And what I think should happen, if they actually want to go ahead and make SummerSlam this 4-hour grandeur spectacular, the granddaddy of the summer, and I will say granddaddy of the summer because unlike the WWE, I can say pretty much whatever I want, because this is my channel and I shall do as I see fit. They really need to have a focus on actual, more actual wrestling. Give the mid-carders something more to do. I mean, you've got plenty of decent talent on that roster that is doing nothing. Now, if it were up to me, like I say, this is just me playing fantasy WWE here. Here's what we do just to get things going. You take Kofi Kingston out of the New Day, turn him face. Him as a heel, it just doesn't work. Here's a guy, very likable, very charismatic, multiple-time United States and Intercontinental Champion. This is a guy who should be in the main event. Now, given the fact that Ryback is likely to be injured for some time, here's what we do to try and solve a little problem. And this is something I said a few years ago on RDR. What they need to do is get mean, the US belt is once again relevant thanks to John Cena. I'm not the biggest Cena fan, but he's made that US title something to be proud of. Something that you could look at that title and think, that guy is really going out of his way to hold on to that belt. Maybe I should go after it. And it's something I'm not seeing in the mid-card division, whether it's for the Intercontinental Championship or the US belt. There's not enough passion. I mean, Steve Austin said it best in an interview promoting WWE 13. There's only a handful of people that have the passion, that want to be there to scratch and claw, and there's only people that are just happy just to be there, just to be on TV. Well, being on TV is being on TV, and you had someone like CM Punk at the time that had the passion. He had the WWE title at that time, and in the mid-card division, Ryback certainly has that passion. Kofi, more than most people, has that passion because the guy is just an unbelievable talent in that ring. Miz, to an extent, but I think he's focusing more on other media aspects of promoting his character, like Tough Talk and Miz TV and whatnot. But it's about time that they actually say, hey, let's get this thing going where, let's say we have Ryback versus The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship and get... Let's just say Cena does drop the title. Let's just say to Kofi Kingston. Let's just go there with that. And then we get a feud with Kofi Kingston and Bray Wyatt. And we have a program where those two get such high-profile matches that one title match finishes after the other every week, and the two of them just sort of, share glances and stares as they go up, and then we culminate in a match at SummerSlam where it's title for title, and the winner, they unify, but they don't unify the two titles. They just, for the time being, they become the United Continental Champion. For, like when Kurt Angle was the Euro Continental Champion, claiming to be the first when it was really D'Lo Brown. That is how I would solve one problem in the mid-card division, and actually do something similar to what TNA had done with the Gut Check Challenge, where you have people that want to get into the company, but they have to do it for these tryout matches. Why don't you take these pre-show matches, put them on the main card, and for the pre-show on SummerSlam, you have tryout matches for guys that want to come up from NXT just to show what there's a way you could do that. You can I know NXT has pay-per-views, but what if you actually have warm-up matches on the pre-show with the wrestlers and the women from NXT put on matches on the pre-show? That's one way you get to solve some of that problem, and then you have more of the main roster guys pushed back onto the actual card, and then you start to fill up the actual card and whatnot. And here's what we do with these promos and segments. If you have them like as interviews out in the back, make them no more than 3 minutes apiece, because that's more than adequate. You don't need to have these promos and segments go on longer than it needs to. Although with the way that CM Punk did his pipe bomb, this is where one of those things where I'm going to make an exception with this. That probably went on a little bit longer than it should have, but everything he had to say within that pipe bomb was something you had to hear, and it was something that a wrestler was saying that we'd all been thinking for years. So yeah, that is how I would, solve the problem with putting more actual matches on a 4-hour SummerSlam. I know it's not a problem yet, per se, but given how WrestleMania goes about filling up the card and the promos and the segments and the commercials, you can already see SummerSlam is going to fall into this similar trap, if you will. All I say to that is, pipe bomb, I'm done.